So I'm Kai Dungarwala from Decoup Architects, and I run the practice along with Shilpa Ranade, who's my partner. We've been there around from 2003 now. So we run a small studio boutique kind of a practice, but not focusing only on homes and apartments. We've done varied kind of institution projects over the last 15 years. The site is located at Wasind, which is about 60 kilometers north of Mumbai, and this is sitting in a industrial facility of the JSW group, which is their color coating plant. And one portion of this is now meant for the housing. So there's like about 54 families are going to be housed in this complex. So this is sitting in a larger complex within which there's a smaller project which is going to happen there. So as you come into the JSW complex, this is like there's a road which sits there. The older set of buildings are sitting in these areas, which are the existing blocks, and there are two blocks sitting here also. The site which we were supposed to work in was roughly around this portion here. So there is a road here, you come into the plant is located somewhere on this side here. So the plant is sitting there. So it's a facility which is sitting very close to the plant, and you're going to develop a housing in this thing. In terms of context, what is a huge marker was there is one large banyan tree which was sitting here. There is a RG, so this portion was something which is reserved for, it's a reserved ground, so it's an RG. So you cannot build on this. So we are kind of located, we were left with this area to work on. So what we started off with, the intent of the project was to create a housing which is more inclusive and more interactive, where you wanted people to be able to relate to each other more easily, because the common paradigm of what housing is and how it's organized programmatically is generally where you have like a central core, and then you have 4 apartments which are sitting here. So you would have that as your central core, 1, 2, 3, 4, and whatever might be happening around there. What we've made is we made a very simple thing where we've opened it up and we've organized these 4 things this way, and then we made a corridor here, and we've added a staircase block here. So the same blue which you see here has now got organized here and here, right? And these are the blocks which are. So what this immediately does is it opens up the possibility of each person looking out, and their house is connected here through this corridor here, as well as the staircase becomes like a public space which is now open to everybody around. So it's a very simple thing in terms of organizing, but it makes a huge impact in terms of how the building now opens out to the people, right? When you take the same thing now at a site level, what one has done is, because the courtyard was there, we've organized 4 blocks in a way where they can now, with their, of course, with these corridors located here. So these corridors are again now opening back out into the courtyard here. And this becomes the second grade of like public space which is being formed, which is this space here. So this is all like a green courtyard, and these houses are now, the apartment blocks are all kind of looking into this space. So each person can see each other from across this thing, and that creates a very interactive atmosphere. We also had to add 6 houses which were like 2-bedroom apartments, and these were all 1-bedroom apartments. So we had 6 apartments for that. So what we had a challenge of organizing that. So what we did was, we took one block and we made like a curved block like this here, and this block became like almost like a marker for this whole thing in terms of how this was coming, and it became like a pivot which tied all of this together. So that's where the road is, which I talked about earlier, which was there, and then there's a road here which is also sitting here. Further to this was the staircases, because so we located the staircases in a way where they all sat here, and so there was a staircase at the end of each block, and we did a simple twist to the staircase which gave it a completely another character. One is that the staircase is open, so you can see when you're walking up the staircases, people can see each other. That doesn't create, it's not again an introverted staircase. But we also did a little twist to it, that we made these staircases, the last leg of the staircase, which is the first flight of the staircase, we turned it around, and we've created different kind of scenarios where people are then, when they're going up, they are almost interacting with each other. Also, it creates a different experience of them walking up the staircase. So it's not your regular staircase which you're going up in a way. So the relationships of the staircase from the road is also very different, because this is the main movement which is happening, and this is almost like these are inviting you up into the buildings and then getting you inside there. One more thing which is done now, so that's the upper level plan, but going back to this sketch, if you see this block, this is the upper level where there is a courtyard here. What we have done at the lower level, we have made each house having now like an otla space here. So you have like steps which are taking you up to an otla here. So the lower houses are almost like individual units, and the accessibility of that is from the movement area right from here itself. Yeah. So you're no longer having to climb on top or going one end and walking past this thing. So each person has an individual house. So this again creates different qualities of interaction between the house and the outside of this thing. Whereas at the upper level, it's a long corridor. It becomes these spaces become very good for children to play in, where mothers, if they don't want them to go down, then that's a good this thing. Whereas here at this, you can sit out into the porch and have your morning cup of tea, or you can read a newspaper. If your neighbor is walking by, you can look out and wave out to them. Coming to the apartment, we did a pre-design study. We went through a lot of the existing houses. What we realized was that there were very high densities, and sometimes there would be a couple with 2 children, maybe 3 children. At times there would be like a parent, maybe two grandparents should be there. Now all of these people had to be fit in that one BHK. So what we did was we created like a small multi-purpose space before you enter the house, in the sense before you enter the living room and the this thing. So this was like a one multi-purpose space which sat here, the kitchen sat here, and the toilet facilities sat on this edge here. So this is like the multi-purpose space which sat here. This is of course your corridor which is sitting outside there. Now this becomes a very interesting space because people use it in different ways. Where some people use it like as a dining space. Some people use it to just put a cot there. Somebody else might put like a living sofa there, and they don't just think. So they have maybe 2 living spaces. They have like a living space here, but they also have a living space here. But it almost becomes like there are grades of publicness again, because if this is like your corridor has a certain public feeling, this is becoming a next public space before you go to the most private spaces in your house. So if this is your bedroom, so this is the sleeping area, this is the living spaces. These only become very, very private then, and this becomes like a transitionary space. Another thing was that we kept the kitchen onto this side, onto the corridor side, very intentionally, because we wanted whoever was cooking, which is largely mothers, to have a possibility of being connected to the corridor and again out to the courtyard. Because again, what that does is that one is, it doesn't trap them inside a space the whole day, and not having a possibility to look out. So this keeps it a little active for them, when people are walking up and down the corridor, they have some interaction. But it also does is that they can kind of watch out and monitor the children. If a small child is playing here, there's a safety thing which works out automatically. So she can do her work there, but she can also look out. Another thing which we've done in the house, which is a very, very small gesture, but it works really powerfully, is separating the bath area and the WC area. Because again, in a high density house, you want the possibility of accessing these 2 spaces in separate these things. So inspiration for a lot of the things which come here comes from traditional ways of living, which have been there in our society, in many societies which is there, but we seem to have kind of lost along the way. Like a simple idea of the corridor being organized in this particular way, this is not a very new thing. It is what Chawls used to do, right? Even the social housing which is done in Netherlands and Holland again has that same typology which was there. So this is a typology which is followed pretty commonly in many places of the world. For some reason in India we've given this up very easily as a thing, and it has its own strengths which we should not lose out on. So we've tried to draw things from very simple examples which are already there in the past, but kind of use them in a contemporary way and create a new living environment which is there. If you look at the section, these are the corridors which I've talked about earlier. That's like a plinth which you enter at, and that otla sits there. So what you get is, again, like if you have somebody who's standing up there, somebody's standing up there, and somebody's here. and you have the ground is moving this way. It establishes all these connections. It establishes the connection with the outside, but it establishes connections with people who are at the ground level also. And that is, you can actually see people using this, that when they get up in the morning, they're talking to each other this thing. At times there is situations where women are sitting in the block across there, and they are able to kind of have a conversation with somebody on the other side also. In terms of elevation, the building is very interesting because what we did was we worked on, it's a simple frame structure with a series of columns which is sitting there. The 3 levels are sitting here. And what we've done is we created screens, right, which are helping to, that it creates a very interesting light and shadow experience when you're in the corridor, but it also creates different degrees of connectivity between the corridor and the open space and the courtyard outside there. So that's how we have articulated the building. The staircase block sits here, and that has its own this thing. So what I was talking about, like you pull a flight out that way, and then you're getting a completely different, because you draw people in. So the whole experience becomes much more dynamic in the way you move up and then you move along the corridor. So that's how we've articulated the elevation. The construction technique, the materiality, it's very simple. It's a frame structure with infill or brickwork, plaster. The plaster is then, it's all about how you kind of articulate the joinery of plaster, beam, column, and the articulation sizes also. A lot of our work is based on proportions and subtlety, and how the balance and restfulness of that is there. So it's not too loud, it's not over the top, but there's a gentleness and there's a balance to the whole thing. So it's very important to achieve the right kind of balance, because finally what is important is that the people who come there have to have a sense of calm and enjoying the thing, rather than the architecture kind of being, you know, over the top as a thing. So that's the basic this thing which we worked with.